The morning sun spilled across the horizon of Nexus, for like molten amber, casting a soft glow over the high grass fields that shimmered in the wind. In the foothills outside the colony's main district, where the biosphere domes thinned and the land was left to grow wild, Ellis Rayne stood barefoot in his hydroponic garden. His hands, once calloused from war, now smelled faintly of damp soil and nutrient gel. The only sound was the low hum of the water circulators and the occasional trill of a native bird, sharp, clean, unfamiliar compared to Earth's fauna. He adjusted a trellis over the vining vegetables, pausing only when his old comm unit buzzed weakly from inside the storage box on his porch. Not many people used those anymore. Ellis wiped his hands on a rag, frowning. The device was a relic, a matte gray cylinder with faded Terran Peacekeeper insignia, the last physical link to a life he'd gladly left behind. He pressed the activation rune. A low static hiss filled the air, followed by a distorted voice. Cyan Priority Echo. All operatives recall. V Sector 419, confirmation key. He frowned deeper. The message was fragmented, repeating in a loop, the encryption halfway broken by age or interference. Nothing official came through those lines anymore. The Peacekeeper network had been mothballed 20 years ago when the last war ended. Still, Ellis didn't delete it. He simply powered it down and slid the device back into the box. Probably a glitch, some leftover auto-broadcast from a derelict satellite. No need to stir ghosts. As he stepped off the porch, he heard soft footfalls on the gravel path leading to his home. A group of children, 2 humans, 1 green-skinned Zeffari, and a wiry Kirellian with glossy violet eyes, jogged up the path with sticks on their backs and oversized boots flopping on their feet. "Mr. Rayne, are we still practicing shelter drills today?" One called out, voice breathless with excitement. Ellis smiled, tilting his head toward the shaded practice field behind his greenhouse. "If you remembered your flares, yes. If not, you get to dig a trench instead." Groans of mock protest followed, and the group bounded past him, laughing and pushing each other with youthful energy. The Kirellian boy, Relin, gave Ellis a respectful nod before joining the others. Polite, quiet, a fast learner. Ellis watched them go with a rare warmth in his chest. Teaching gave him something the military never had, a sense of building, not just surviving. By midday, the drills were over and the sun hung high, baking the dry grass into a brittle gold. Ellis sent the children home with purified water packs and half-ripe fruit. He was halfway through shutting down the solar array when he noticed something strange. Relin hadn't shown up with the others to collect his things. That wasn't like him. Ellis scanned the field, then the tree line. Nothing. A creeping unease settled in his chest. He checked the perimeter drones, inactive, as they always were during practice. No footprints in the clay beyond the boundary. No sign of disturbance. Still, he locked up and walked to the community comm terminal near the village junction. The neighborhood here was a blend of domes and timber frame homes, vines crawling up their exteriors, many with painted banners showing family crests or tribal symbols from different species. A Zeffari elder nodded to him as she passed, carrying seed jars. 2 human teens on hoverboards zipped by without a glance. A Kirellian vendor adjusted her spice rack as Ellis approached, her long, blade-like fingers pausing briefly as she noticed his Peacekeeper insignia tattoo peeking from under his sleeve. She didn't say anything. Not many did, unless they needed something. He keyed into the colony's local alert channel and sent a brief note. Rel Lintar, unaccounted for. Last seen in Sector South 3, time index 1214. The system pinged back. No recent logs. No transport records. No pings from personal comms. Ellis stared at the screen for a long moment, then closed the terminal. It was probably nothing. Kids got curious. Wandered off. Still, the static on his old comm echoed faintly in his mind. Down the street, a pair of human shopkeepers were arguing with a Kirellian overpricing of the tech market. It wasn't loud, wasn't overt, but the way the human man stood, arms crossed, voice clipped, and the tightness in the Kirellian woman's jaw said enough. No shouting, no threats, just the invisible barrier of not being fully trusted. Ellis walked on. He told himself Rayne would turn up before dusk. But the wind shifted then, dry and sudden, and brought with it the faint scent of scorched ozone, the kind only Terran drones emitted when cloaked and moving fast. His eyes narrowed. Something had passed through the trees. And it wasn't one of the kids. By morning, Rayne still hadn't returned. Ellis stood on the edge of the forest, arms crossed as dawn filtered through the alien canopy. Nexus 4's native trees stretched high, their glassy trunks reflecting fractured light like stained crystal. Beneath them, the underbrush grew dense, bioluminescent fungi, casting soft glows from the base of roots. It was beautiful in the way deep water is beautiful, mesmerizing but hiding things. A search drone skimmed overhead, whirring softly, scanning for life signatures. The settlement civil defense network had dispatched 3 such drones, but Ellis had no faith in them. They were older models, built for firewatch and pathfinding, not rescue. He checked his own handheld tracker. Still no ping from Rayne's personal tag. Should have upgraded him myself, Ellis muttered, brushing aside a thorn vine. An hour later, they found the boy. Rayne was curled beneath the twisted roots of a fallen tree, his pale violet skin scraped and singed. His eyes were glassy, his breath shallow but steady. Burn marks, round, precise, peppered his tunic. Not from fire, not from claws. Pulse-based, low frequency. Weaponized. Ellis knelt beside him, brushing dirt from the boy's forehead. Rayne flinched but didn't wake. "Got you," Ellis whispered, lifting him gently into a rescue sling. By the time they returned to the settlement, the sun was already rising higher, casting sharp shadows across the village's narrow roads. A small crowd had gathered outside the med bay. Parents, classmates, a few curious locals. When Ellis carried Rayne in, they parted wordlessly. Inside, the human medic, Davin Sharp, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as he scanned the boy and began administering regenerative sprays. Minor concussion, skin trauma, no organ damage. "What did this?" Ellis asked. Sharp shrugged. He said metal beast before passing out. Probably a heat mirage or a drone shadow spooked him. He has weapon burns. A lot of kids roughhouse. Could have stumbled into old wreckage. Or he fell. Kids don't fall in pulse formation. Sharp didn't answer. He pulled the curtain around Rayne and moved on. Back outside, whispers had already begun. He probably wandered off again. They're always looking for trouble, trying to stir sympathy. Ellis caught the eye of a nearby counselor, a human woman named Vardalin. She offered a tight smile and a dismissive shrug. "We'll look into it, Commander." But there's no sign of hostile activity. He almost corrected her, former commander, but didn't waste a breath. Instead, he walked the perimeter of the settlement, tracing the line where jungle met fence. Half a kilometer west, he found it, a charred ring of underbrush, perfectly circular, with a fine layer of ash that hadn't drifted from campfire or flare. This was drone exhaust, military grade, recent. Kneeling, Ellis sifted the ash until his fingers brushed something smooth, a shard of matte metal, half buried in the soil. He pulled it free, squinting at the surface. It was scorched, but the Peacekeeper sigil was unmistakable. He stood slowly, the shard clutched in one hand. It was impossible. That class of drone hadn't been deployed in years. The recall orders were strict. All Peacekeeper hardware was decommissioned or destroyed when the Treaty of Thaler was signed. To possess one now, especially active in Kirellian zones. No, this wasn't a rogue machine. This was deliberate. The question was who sent it. And why now? Back in the settlement square, market stalls were opening for the midday crowd. Aromas of seared meat, roasted fungi, and tangy fruit wafted from food stands. A group of Zeffari children played with a bounce orb in the common square, giggling as it pinged between them. Above, banners fluttered. Human blue, Kirellian purple, Zeffari orange, a display of unity that often felt more ceremonial than sincere. At a corner stall, a Kirellian spice vendor rearranged her wares, speaking softly to a customer. A human man who frowned at the listed price and then walked away muttering. Ellis noted the exchange. Another human approached the same vendor minutes later, trying to talk her down by more than 50%. She refused, voice calm but firm. The human left without buying. It wasn't new. Ellis had seen the shift for years. The slow erosion of goodwill, the steady return of mistrust. Officially, the species of Nexus were equal under law. But when power was measured in council seats, military access, and economic clout, humans still held the cards. Ellis reached his porch just as the wind changed again. That same hint of ozone, faint but real. He looked toward the sky, squinting. No drone, no shadow, but the feeling remained. Inside, he placed the Peacekeeper shard on his table, next to the old comm device. Then he sat down, rubbing his temples. He didn't want to be part of this. He had given enough. But peace, like a garden, didn't grow on its own. It had to be watched, tended, protected, even from its own gardeners. The settlement of Dust Bridge lay nestled in the shadow of Nexus 4's mid-latitude ridgeline, where rolling hills gave way to sharp cliffs and the jungle thickened into near-permanent twilight. It was a place built on cooperation, at least on the surface. Each building told a story. Human prefab domes stacked with solar fins, Kirellian spires crafted from translucent coral stone, Zeffari yurts wrapped in woven plant matter that shifted hue with the weather. No central design, no imposed order, just overlapping lives stitched together by necessity. Ellis walked the main concourse after sundown, the sky above a deep purple fractured by distant moons and the hazy band of Nexus's rings. Phosphorescent bulbs swung from power poles, casting warm glows across the path. Vendors hawked steamed roots and fermented nectar. Artisans displayed glimmering light scrolls of alien calligraphy. Music played low, a mix of human acoustic chords and Zeffari wind synths, blended into something new and strangely comforting. But beneath the noise and color, the fracture lines showed. At the public fountain, a Kirellian family sat on the stone bench, the mother rocking a sleepy hatchling while the father read a new scroll aloud. Two humans passed by, a man and a woman in agriculture uniforms. And as they passed, the man muttered, not quietly, "Shouldn't be out this late. Flash mobs last week, remember?" The woman didn't respond. She just gave the Kirellians a once-over and moved on. Ellis slowed his pace. The Kirellian father met his gaze for a moment, calm, unflinching, then looked away, gently folding his scroll. There had been no flash mobs, just a peaceful march last week, organized after zoning law pushed several Kirellian families out of market space they'd used for years. The council had called it a clerical update. The Kirellians had called it erasure. Ellis remembered when the council meetings were louder, more honest, back when representatives of each species actually sat at the same table. Now, the council chamber was mostly human. One token Zeffari, no Kirellians. The reasoning, they said, was security continuity. He turned down a side path, heading toward the southern fields. The air changed as he passed from the heart of the settlement into the growing outskirts. Less crowded, more silence. Farther from where people watched each other carefully. He built his greenhouse here for that reason. For the quiet. For space to breathe. But tonight, the silence felt wrong. He stepped past his gate, crunching gravel underfoot. The greenhouse's auto lights flicked on as he approached, bathing the structure in cool white. Rows of bioluminescent stock fruit shimmered beneath climate-regulated panels, their stems curling like question marks. Then he heard it, a soft click behind the garden wall. Not animal, mechanical. Ellis dropped low instinctively, slipping between rows and easing toward the sound. He reached the wall and crouched, listening. A soft rustle, a faint whir. He moved fast, pivoting around the corner and activating his wrist lamp. Nothing there, just a small mound of displaced soil. He knelt and brushed it aside, uncovering a metallic object the size of a plum. Black, hexagonal, studded with filament hairs and a blinking node in the center. A listening device. Ellis swore under his breath and scooped it up. The casing bore no serial code, but the design was Terran, military grade. This one wasn't just a recorder. It was an adaptive snooper, used to collect encrypted comms and tag biometric signatures. Whoever placed it knew what they were doing, and they were watching him. He brought it inside and opened his old storage case. His Peacekeeper tools still sat in perfect condition, untouched for years. He hadn't needed them, not since the armistice. Until now, Ellis plugged the device into his old scanner and began sifting through the last hour of recorded data. Mostly background noise, wind, bugs, faint snippets of his own voice. But deep in the file, buried in low frequencies, a digital handshake code echoed, one he recognized instantly. Terran Command. Black Ops Tier. Ghost level clearance. He stood slowly, staring at the console. This wasn't a rogue agent. This was authorized. Someone inside the human defense hierarchy was running a covert op on Nexus 4. Against the treaties. Against the peace. The boy Rayne. The drone burns. The shard in the jungle. It all fit now. But what was the purpose? Surveillance? Mapping targets? Testing reactions? Ellis's gut turned cold. He opened the comm locker and looked at the dusty headset resting there. He didn't want to put on. He hadn't wanted anything to do with war again. He'd retired for a reason, not just weariness, but guilt. Guilt from the last time he trusted intel without asking who it really served. Outside, a cold wind moved through the trees. Ellis closed the locker. Not tonight, but soon. And next time, he wouldn't just listen. Ellis rose before first light. He did every morning, but today felt different. He worked his garden in silence, letting his fingers move through soil that had fed dozens of families over the past 5 years. Tomato stalks, root ferns, and frost vine curled lazily in the dawn chill, awaiting the warmth. His breath fogged the air. Normally, the routine brought comfort. But today, every creak of the wood panels, every flicker of shadow beyond the bioshade glass, reminded him he wasn't alone. Someone had bugged his land. Not just a probe in the trees, inside the wall. Inside the space he'd cultivated for peace. He turned the topsoil with deliberate care, scanning for anything out of place. He found a second device under the western bed, nearly invisible beneath a layer of hydrogel. Sleeker than the last. More advanced. Its outer shell adjusted to match the color of the soil as he touched it. Camouflage tech. Too advanced for anything listed in public Terran inventories. Probably fresh off black market manufacturing lines, or sanctioned without record. He stared at it a moment too long before slipping it into a sealed container and burying it inside his tool shed. The authorities wouldn't believe him if he brought it to the council. Not without making it political. And Ellis hated politics. He'd seen what came of that. Later that morning, the school bell rang in the village square, chiming in 3 rising notes, an old earth melody, adapted to local rhythm. Children poured into the main plaza, Zeffari with their flowing robes, Kirellian youths in patterned sashes, humans in utilitarian tunics and boots. The school was one of the only places left where integration still looked real. Ellis leaned on the garden gate and watched as Rayne appeared, moving carefully but upright, the bruises on his neck still faintly purple. The boy offered a nod, respectful, not fearful, but his eyes darted toward the rooftops, then back toward the trees. He'd seen something, and he remembered. Ellis started toward him, but the bell rang again, longer this time. A delay chime. Something was wrong. Then came the council alert over the village broadcast system. Attention citizens, temporary lockdown in effect. Please remain near Central District. Maintenance protocols initiated. That was a lie. Maintenance alerts didn't lock people in. Ellis jogged across the square to the admin building, where the council office occupied the upper floor above the archives. The council chambers were always open to the public. Symbolic transparency, part of the post-war charter. But now, the doors were sealed, guarded by 2 Terran security officers in freshly pressed uniforms. Neither looked older than 30. Ellis slowed his approach. This building's not military. The shorter officer, a redhead with a taut jawline, straightened. Council's requested full perimeter control. Protocol 9. Ellis blinked. There is no Protocol 9. That was repealed with the dissolution of colonial emergency law. The second guard shifted uneasily, but didn't answer. Ellis took 1 step closer. I'm going inside. The redhead didn't move. You can't. Step back, citizen. He wanted to press it. Demand access, demand answers. But not here. Not in the open, with kids watching from the school windows and market vendors pausing mid-transaction. Instead, he turned and walked. He walked the long way around the square, through the side streets where human-only housing blocks had quietly started forming in recent months. Not official segregation. No signs, no laws, just zoning preferences, council incentives, quiet shifts in pricing. He passed a construction site where a Kirellian work crew installed solar infrastructure. Their foreman, a burly human named Karth Wells, was arguing with them over timeline slippage. Should have been done yesterday, Karth barked. Maybe if you people use standard tools, we wouldn't be weeks behind. One of the Kirellians replied calmly, but Karth waved him off and stormed away. Ellis followed him down the alley. Karth. The man turned, surprised. Commander Rayne. Don't call me that. A pause. What's going on in the admin tower? Ellis asked. Karth shrugged. They said it's a regional review. High clearance stuff. Nothing to do with us. I found a peacekeeper snooper on my land. Now Karth's eyes narrowed. You sure? Could have been salvage tech. You know how much Kirellian junk's been circling lately. Ellis didn't bite. If someone's stirring up trouble, we need to know now. Not after someone gets killed. Karth didn't reply. He looked away, jaw tight. You still see them as allies, he said quietly. But they don't see us the same. Ellis exhaled. You don't know that. Don't I? They've got roots under every market stall, patents wrapped in tribal banners. They want this place. Not to share, to reclaim. Ellis stepped forward, lowering his voice. You fought with me. You saw the cost when we let fear run policy. Karth's eyes hardened. That was then. Now's different. He walked off without another word. Ellis watched him go. Above the rooftops, the sky darkened. Not with storm clouds, but with contrails. Faint, high altitude, sharp lines slicing across the blue. They weren't merchant vessels. Ellis turned and walked home, every step heavier than the last. The soil beneath his feet had once been full of promise, but now it remembered too much, and it was starting to whisper. The next morning arrived silent and cold. Ellis brewed tea from dried leaf vine and sat on his porch as dawn crept across the treetops. His greenhouse steamed gently in the early sun, condensation beating on the bioshield glass. Everything looked normal, serene even, but he could feel it in his bones, the kind of quiet that meant something was about to break. His comm unit chirped. One line, no sender ID, just coordinates. Grid vector K2, Northeast Ridge. Outside patrol limits. Ellis stared at the message. No signature, no encryption. Someone was being careful. Or careless. He geared up. The trek took an hour. The jungle here was older, untouched by settlement expansion, and thick with gravity-twisted trees and carpet-like moss that whispered beneath every footfall. Vines coiled like dormant serpents around cracked stone monoliths, remnants of the Zeffari's long-forgotten migration paths. At the crest of the ridge, he found it. A drone nest. 4 of them, half buried beneath thermal cloak tarp, pulsing faintly. Military spec. Terran design. Not scavenge deployed. Fresh fuel lines, uncorroded launch rails, active uplinks. And they were pointed inward, toward Dustbridge. Ellis scanned their systems. The interface recognized his ID. Old command access still worked, barely. He pulled up the most recent logs. Recon data, biometric tracking, civilian movement analysis, target prioritization lists. Names. Kirellian names. Dozens. Ellis felt his chest tighten as the implications set in. This wasn't just surveillance. It was pre-operation staging. He heard a footstep behind him. Karth stood at the tree line, pulse rifle lowered but not slung. Figured you'd come. Ellis turned slowly. You knew this was here. Karth nodded. They asked me to keep eyes on it. Council's expanding containment authority. Said you try to interfere. Ellis stepped toward him. This is a kill list. You're calling that containment. They're not acting. Just watching. Planning contingencies. Look, Ellis, Karth's voice dropped. You know what they're like. How fast they move when they think they're boxed in. We can't afford another uprising. There was no uprising, Ellis snapped. A protest isn't sedition. A voice raised isn't a weapon. Cartha's eyes darkened. You don't get it. They never stopped seeing us as invaders. You think this place works because of peace. It doesn't. It works because they're afraid to push too far. No, Ellis said, stepping past him. It works because people like us, who've seen what war really costs, built something better. He placed a hand on the nearest drone. His ID flickered across the system again. Deactivate. Confirmation required. Ellis stared at the prompt, thumb hovering above the confirm key. Carth raised his rifle, not aiming but close. If you shut that down, they'll send more. And next time it won't be passive. You'll burn this whole thing down. No, Ellis said quietly. You will. With your fear. With your silence. He pressed the key. The drones went dark. Carth didn't move for a long moment. Then he lowered the rifle. You've made your choice. Ellis nodded. So have you. By midday, word had spread. Not about the drones. Ellis hadn't told anyone, not yet, but about a fire. A small one, down by the southern fields. Faulty capacitor, the report said. But Ellis knew better. It was meant to distract, to test response speed, to draw eyes away from the ridge. He walked through the streets of Duskbridge, watching faces. Human vendors serving human buyers. Kirellians exchanging nervous glances. Zeffari elders tightening their shawls, whispering to each other in tones thick with tension. Relwyn sat near the fountain, sketching in a lightboard. When Ellis passed, the boy looked up. It was you, he said simply. Ellis paused. What do you mean? You stopped it. I saw them. The sky machines. But they never came back. Ellis said nothing, just nodded once and kept walking. That night, he returned to the greenhouse. He stood beneath the stars, beneath the soft glow of a world still trying to decide what it wanted to be. Peace was not a gift. It was a harvest, and someone had to tend it, even when others salted the soil.